What's up, everybody? This is Dan Thompson, Rally Association, the podcast, and this is now the NBA Draft Fallout edition of the show. And for the next 6 podcasts, we're going to break down each of the teams. I'm going to break down each of the teams that had their draft choices happen on Thursday night in the NBA draft. And really, the division we'll start with today in the first edition of this will be the Southeast Division, a division I particularly cover because I'm here in Orlando covering the Magic on a regular basis. So I have a little bit closer knowledge of what happened in Orlando, plus the other 4 teams of the division, because this is a division that we see more. I see more than anybody else because, by the way, the NBA schedule is set. You see his team more than anybody else. Set teams more than anybody else. So I'm going to give you the choices, my grades, and why I think this team deserves the grade they got. The Miami Heat, I will start out with first. The Heat got it incomplete because all their draft choices, including their first round pick, were gone in the Gordon Dragic trade. So they have nothing in the barrel this year in the draft. Miami is still trying to figure out what to do in the offseason. Hassan Whiteside has become a humongous issue going forward. Can Whiteside be that guy to find himself? They struggled in the playoffs last year. Their first round pick ended up in the hands of the Phoenix Suns, who at that turn took Zaire Smith. At that pick ended up trading it for Miles Bridges, and we'll talk about that trade in another podcast because those two teams are 2 separate divisions. So the Heat didn't make any changes in the draft this year, and let's start out with a team that had the highest pick in the draft in the division, which would be the Atlanta Hawks. The Hawks picked third, and they had 3 first round picks. They were picking 3, 19, and 30 in the first round, and had the 35th overall pick as well too. So they had 4 picks in the top 35. So let's take a look at what they did. They ended up taking with the 3rd overall pick, they ended up with Luka Doncic, guard from Slovenia. Doncic, a multi-versatile guard. Come to find out, not even before the pick was made, that pick was traded to the Dallas Mavericks. The Mavericks now have Luka Doncic, and now the Atlanta Hawks, in return, receive a 2019 protected top 5 pick, which they'll have in next year's draft. As long as the pick doesn't enter the top 5, it's theirs. And they went down to 5 to draft Oklahoma's Trae Young. They also, at 19, drafted Kevin Huerter. After a potential trade had fell through due to social media, the Hawks were going to move up to 17 move up to 17 to take Huerter. But the thing was, with social media and Twitter kind of letting the picks go, the Hawks didn't make that deal. And then at 30, they took Amari Spellman. The 2nd round pick at 34 ended up being traded to the Charlotte Hornets. Who took Devontae Graham, who I'll get to in a second. So let's look at the Hawks' first round picks. Trae Young was picked over at 5th overall. I watched Trae. He worked out here in Orlando, one of the few guys that did work out here in Orlando. And I was really impressed with the kids. Not to mention his body, because he's grown up. His body has changed a lot since he first went to Oklahoma. He's very good. He's a very good. He's very good with the media. But the thing is, he just wants to win. Now, being drafted by Atlanta is not exactly the most ideal situation at the very beginning. Like I said, being in Orlando, being drafted in Orlando would be kind of a different story because Orlando needed a point guard. We'll get to them in a minute. Atlanta already has a point guard that makes a little good bit of money in Dennis Schroeder. They also have Kent Bazemore, who plays the 2. And so drafting 2 guards in the first round is kind of an interesting concept. Now, mind you, Trae Young is not just any particular guard. Young did average 27 points and 8 assists a game, which led the country in both those categories this year. And for those who watch enough Trae Young is a bombs away type of point guard. Some people reminds him some of Steph Curry. To me, it reminds me a lot of Chris Jackson, Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. Jackson, when he first came into LSU, Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, after he changed his name, for the Denver Nuggets for all those years, a guy who can come in and just bomb away right away, but he has playmaking skills. So now, how does this go work with Lloyd Pierce in Atlanta? Really, Trae Young's development will maintain on the fact of, will the Atlanta Hawks be able to trade Dennis Schroeder in the next week or 2? Sometime before the season starts. If Schroeder is traded, which could be a high possibility, now the thing is somebody trying to take on Schroeder, and there's a couple teams that could do it, or it's a couple teams that could use the help of Dennis Schroeder. If they can find the ability to move him this summer, then you're going to have a nice fit, with Trae Young and a brand new head coach in Lloyd Pierce's offense. Now, if they can't move Trae Young, this could become a real problem. The Hawks didn't address anything on the interior in the first round. Even though Amari Spellman is a big guy from Villanova, Spellman's more of a stretch 4. He has range, hit over 53 pointers last year, and did block over 50 shots for Villanova, who won the national championship. But he's not the shot blocking interior presence, or another high double rebounder guy like Marvin Bagley could have been, or a guy like Jaren Jackson if they decide to take him at 3. So the Hawks. But the good news of the Hawks is they had the 2 best shooters in the draft. They said Young was always known for his shooting ability, but don't forget Kevin Huerter, by many, was listed as the 2nd best shooter in the draft. So it's kind of like Splash Brothers 2.0 in Atlanta. Now, how is this going to work for the Hawks in their future is the fact of, like I said, they trade Schroeder and get Schroeder off the roster. Bazemore is a solid enough defender to be a 3rd guard, and the NBA do need 3 guards. I don't think Huter's going to come in and start right away, but Huter does come off the bench and can provide some kind of firepower. They also have Taurean Prince, and then John Collins had a tremendous second part of the season last year after receiving more and more playing time. So if the Hawks can address another big man, Spellman could come in and get some good solid minutes. He can play next to Collins because he's a stretch 4. If Amari can continue to block shots and be a stretch 4, he'd be a nice fit. I don't see Huter or Spellman being starters from day one, but I do see them being contributors in Laura Pierce going forward. So right now, I'm going to give the Hawks a C+ right now on their draft. Only reason being is that because we still do not understand Dennis Schroeder. If Schroeder is moved, then this draft class will definitely go up because Trae Young is a phenomenal talent. But for right now, when you have a point guard making $17 million a year, it's kind of difficult to give them a high grade, especially if he's on the roster and your first overall pick is a point guard. So when you look at the Charlotte Hornets, the Hornets are now, after I said the Hawks are in alphabetical order, we'll go next to the Charlotte Hornets. The Hornets had 3 picks in the draft. They started with the 11th overall pick. They ended up acquiring the 34th overall pick, and they had their original pick in the 2nd round. So the Hornets started their draft up by taking Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, point guard from Kentucky, with the 11th overall pick. A pick that most people in Charlotte most people in mock drafts had him going right at that slot. He was even going as high as number 6 to Orlando in earlier parts of the day through some media outlets and some draft experts had him going that high. Now, Alexander's a 6'6" point guard that has tremendous length and also was the SEC tournament MVP. His time in Charlotte was about maybe less than 5 to 7 minutes because after he was selected, he was then traded to the LA Clippers in a trade that had the Clippers move down 1 spot, and also the Hornets acquired 2 second-round picks. Now, mind you, the Hornets were in second-round pick mode earlier in the week as they acquired Timothy Mozgov and some second-round picks when they traded Dwight Howard and his $24 million expiring contract away, getting them out of the luxury tax, but adding on Timothy Mozgov for 2 more years. After the trade, the Hornets ended up acquiring Miles Bridges from Michigan State. They said they add Devontae Graham at 34 and Aroldis Kabuka at 55. So let's talk about Miles Bridges. Bridges, a guy who was a lottery pick the previous season, decided to come back to school, think he was going to raise his draft status. Didn't do much more at Michigan State this year than he did the previous year. Still ended up in the lottery, lower half of the lottery, like I said, number 12. He is a 3-and-D guy. And so really what Miles Bridges he is a great athlete at 6'6". He has a lot of power forward game in him, but he's a little bit undersized. So we watched at Michigan State. A lot of people thought about maybe Draymond Green because Green is the same type of player, kind of undersized 4. It's undersized 4 or 5 playing that position in the league. I'm not saying Bridges is going to be Draymond Green. That's a great comparison. But Miles Bridges is a 6'6" wing defender that can play the 3-and-D situation. Now, he's actually a little bit better scorer than the incumbent small forward of Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. And so with him coming into the fold, what could happen is Bridges could definitely get some time because he can defend. That's the good thing. He's one of those 3-and-D guys who can defend and bring more offensive awareness than Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. At Bridges averaged over 8 rebounds a game at Michigan State. I think he was right behind Jaren Jackson Jr. in that category. He's a pretty solid scorer, working on hitting the jump shot more consistently, but he'll come into a Charlotte offense under James Borrego that needs as much scoring from the wings as possible. Bridges could make a high impact. I was hoping and thinking that Kevin Knox would have been down there for Charlotte at 11. Knox would be a little bit more of an efficient scorer at that point, but to get one of the best 3-and-D wings in college basketball at the 12th overall pick is a very, very solid a very, very solid foundation. Now, Devontae Graham was picked at 34. They traded with the Atlanta Hawks, giving up some of those future second rounders to get Devontae Graham. Graham, from Kansas, point guard, was actually targeted by the Orlando Magic. The Magic had, from what I was told, was Magic had given him a promise at 35. The Magic were going to take him until the Hornets swooped in, ironically, from the Hawks, and took Graham, the point guard, at 34. Now, what Devontae Graham's going to do is he's a solid defender, a good point guard. He should make the Charlotte roster. It's still kind of up in the air, kind of how much of a role he's going to play. I think they're bringing back Marcus Carter-Williams. Of course, you have Kemba Walker, you have Nicholas Batum, you have Malik Monk. Graham could be one of those guys that can be down in Greensboro for a little while as he develops his point guard game a little bit more, and and becomes a much more solid point guard. But he could be something Charlotte uses in the future. And Kabuka is going to be a guy who's going to be a draft and stash guy. You won't see him anywhere near Charlotte in the next year or two plus. So what I give Charlotte for their draft, I guess they got Miles Bridges, a super athlete who's going to play the three. I give Charlotte a B-. They still did not address maybe a potential backup center situation. I know they have 4 centers on the roster. You're looking at Kaminsky, Zeller, Willie Hearn-Gomez, and now Mozgov. They have a bunch of bodies, but none of them stood out. It'd been nice if Charlotte could have took Mitchell Robinson over Graham at 34. Mitchell Robinson, a high schooler that went to New York, a guy with tremendous upside, even though he didn't miss the entire season last year because he was supposed to go to Western Kentucky. It didn't work out. He decided to take the year off to get ready for the NBA draft. I think Mitchell Robinson would have been a better fit at 34 than Graham because given the fact that Charlotte doesn't have much on the low post. But remember, if Marvin Williams can play some more, can play the 3, maybe the 4, potentially Miles Bridges can do the same thing. Like I said, we skipped over Miami because they didn't have the draft choices. So let's talk about the Orlando Magic. The Magic, who picked at number 6, also had a couple other picks at 35, and they had 41, but then traded the 41st overall pick, which was Jarrett Vanderbilt to Denver for the 43rd overall pick, and then they took Justin Jackson at 43. So the Magic's picks in order were Mohamed Bamba at 6, Melvin Frazier at 35, and Justin Jackson at 43. So let's talk about the 6th overall pick. Now, in Orlando down here, it's been one of those things where the Magic have been needing a point guard. They haven't had an efficient scoring point guard or efficient scoring guard in years. In team history, they've only had 2 guards, unless you count Tracy McGrady as 3. They've had 3 guards in the history of the franchise that have averaged over 20 points a game. You're looking at Tracy McGrady, you're looking at Anthony Penny Hardaway, who did it a couple times, and you're looking at Steve Francis. So it's been since 2005 since Steve Francis was a member of the Magic that they had a guard score over 20 points a game. So when you have a problem like that, and I think ironically Trae Young would have fit that mold, especially with Steve Clifford coming into the fold, you would think that would have been the perfect marriage between 2 guys. Trae Young, who plays the pick and roll. Kemba Walker was great in that in Charlotte. A pick and roll point guard who could hit off the dribble, off the 3-pointer, and it had tremendous bounce from that 3-point line shooting wise. It was the perfect match in heaven. But since the Hawks decided to swoop up and take Trae Young after their workout, it left Mohamed Bamba for the Orlando Magic at 6. Bamba, who is quite possibly the longest player in the NBA, longest wingspan in the NBA, over 7'10", a elite shot blocker. Now, in this draft class, if you don't get the guy you want, you always go for the best player available. And Jeff Weltman said from the very beginning, they weren't locked in completely on a point guard with a 6th overall pick. It's just getting about the best basketball talent. And at this point, the Magic need all the basketball talent they can get. In my opinion, outside of Jonathan Isaac, and like I said, with the situation of Aaron Gordon being a free agent this summer, I don't think anything else on this roster is untouchable. So with that being said, you have Mohamed Bamba coming in, 19 years old, a shot blocker extraordinaire, and a really, really good rebounder from Texas to come in and man your paint. The good thing about Steve Clifford is that he's also developed big men as well, too. Remember, he took a young Dwight Howard when he was in Orlando and helped mold him into the player he was. And look at Dwight Howard's numbers last year in Charlotte. He had his best season in years in Charlotte. It really was a potential all-star in a lot of cases. Should have been on the all-star team in some ways in the Eastern Conference this year, selected-wise, to the all-star game. Now, what is Mo Bamba going to bring to Orlando? Bamba is a shot blocker. Now, you're saying, okay, look at Orlando's roster. You have Nikola Vucevic, who's a big scorer, Bismack Biyombo, who was brought in to block shots, and Kem Birch, who's a high-energy guy. The problem with Vucevic is that Vucevic is a very, very good, double-double guy, can rebound, and he can score the basketball. The problem is for as good as Nikola Vucevic is offensively, he's not that good defensively. And it's not because he doesn't try. I think this year was the best year that Vucevic had defensively, but he just doesn't have the lateral quickness and the speed to block shots and be a rim protector. Bamba is an elite rim protector right now. And now envisioning the Magic going forward, you have him and Jonathan Isaac, two guys who actually know each other because Isaac is from the Bronx and Bamba is from Harlem. They're a year apart. They actually played, and Mo told us during the introduction to him on Friday that they've had a pre-existing relationship. They play at camps together in New York. They played against each other in high school. They have a very good working knowledge of one another. And, it's a guy that he kind of said he looked up to in the process and wanted to be like and actually be better than at the time. And now they're both on the same team, and it's going to be a beautiful thing to watch. Two guys with outstanding wingspans and two guys who are superly competitive, young guys. And the one thing about Mo Bamba, when you watched him and listened to him, is that Mo Bamba is one of the more entertaining and engaging young kids I have ever come across. Anybody who talked to him in Chicago was blown away by his demeanor and the way he speaks. But at the same time, it is a real different side of air. And the first thing that he said to the press conference was he was going to call Shaq to see if he can buy his house on the cheap. Because he has a pre-existing relationship with Sharif O'Neal and, of course, Shaquille O'Neal as well, too. What Bamba's going to bring on, as I said, shot blocking. And really, if you look at the workout tapes, he's worked on his outside shot. I asked him a question about the outside shooting on the night he was drafted. And he said he took over 200 threes a day in the process to become a better three-point shooter because he wants to revolutionize the game at center. There are very few guys that are athletically gifted as Bamba, and I can't even count on one hand how many guys at his size with that much athleticism and that much lateral mobility and quickness. If you remember, his shuttle court run was the fastest that anybody can remember. I mean, we're talking faster than Russell Westbrook and John Wall from three-quarter court to three-quarter court. It was just amazing. He's going to take up a lot of space. He's going to be able to erase shots, and that's something he can do right now. Now, the scary part is, can he develop an offensive game? If he develops any sort of offensive game, then the Magic can hit a home run at this point. He comes in, he's the best player that was available on the board, and in some cases, he was right behind DeAndre Ayton as the second best player in the draft. He wasn't number 2 on my big board. He was actually number 4 on my big board. I had Ayton, Doncic, and Bagley in front of him on the board. So to get my 4th best overall player at 6, I think it's a win for Orlando. 35 is Melvin Frazier from Tulane, the American Conference MVP, most valuable player, most improved player last season at Tulane. A wing player with tremendous hops, tremendous lateral mobility, and also, like I said, one of these guys with long wingspan. He's a very, very good 3-and-D guy. If you look at him, he's on paper, he is an offensive version of Wes Iwundu. Iwundu's a solid defender, but Melvin Frazier can score the basketball as well, too. He can get off the dribble. He has tremendous hops and very good athleticism. And he can come in right away and play at 3 position. Now, you look at the 3 position Orlando now, you have Terrence Ross, you have Jonathan Simmons, and I think if you add on Iwundu or, at this point, Justin Jackson, another guy who they took later in that round, I'll get to in a second, that could mean the end of Mario Hezonja in Orlando. I think it might be time to move on from the 6th overall pick from 5th overall pick from a few years ago, and I think it might be that time to parting the ways. The Magic have a lot of length and they have a lot more versatility. Not to say that Mario can't do either one of those two. It's just that I think it might be a time for parting. It has nothing against Mario as a player. I think it's time. Sometimes some players don't work in some organizations. I think Hezonja has a bright future. I just think with the way the Magic are going, I don't know if he's going to be brought back, even though Hezonja can play the 4 at times, and he's shown flashes. I'm just not sure he's going to be back next season. Like I said, they drafted two more small forwards who are going to be really, really contributors. I think Frazier, who had a first-round grade by some, could potentially even make this roster, being the second-round pick. Now, Justin Jackson from Maryland had a really, really good freshman season. Shot over 40% from the three-point line. Hurt his shoulder. Played 14 games. Played I think 11 games last year, and didn't look 100% coming back from a shoulder injury, even though he declared for the draft. Jackson has a lot to prove. I think it's going to start Summer League, and when you watch the Magic in Summer League the next couple of days, it starts on July 7th out in Vegas. I think it's Wes Iwundu has to look over his shoulders right now because you have 2 small forwards they drafted in the second round, just like him last year. And if one of those guys can show it in Summer League, they're going to get a leg up on Iwundu, who's been in this league for a year. So if I look at the Magic right now and look at their draft grade, I give the Magic an A. I think the Magic, like I said, when you take the best, when you take talent over quote unquote a whole, it's a smarter fit. And remember, even if they drafted Colin Sexton, even if they drafted Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the Magic were not going to make neither one of those guys were going to get the Magic in the playoffs. Even Trae Young wasn't going to get in the playoffs as a rookie. It's still going to take some roster shifting and forward movement to get them into the playoffs. Last team in the division we're going to go over is the Washington Wizards. They drafted Trey Brown with the 16th overall pick, and they drafted Issa Santa with, I think, the 44th overall pick. Issa is not going to see the Magic, see the floor in Washington this year. He's a draft and stash guy, so don't even worry about him even being a factor. I think the Wizards are just trying to get, of course they use a pick and take somebody in the future. Now, Troy Brown is a 6'7" wing player from Oregon. Not exactly the best shooter. And that's something kind of surprised me, but I think in Washington's case, they passed on Lonnie Walker, which I'm still wondering why they didn't pass. They passed on him, and they didn't have a chance to get Jerome Robinson, who was taken 13. I think that's the guy they really wanted. It was taken by the Clippers with their second first round pick. But Troy Brown comes in. He's going to be a nice little interchangeable piece of the 2-guard to go next to Kelly Oubre off the bench. He provides another body off the bench, especially Brad Beal, behind All-Star Brad Beal. And he can defend, he can slash the basket, still working on his shooting, and that's something he's got to spend more time in the gym in. And he's very athletic. So he'll come in and he'll be another athletic wing off the bench with Kelly Oubre, and the Wizards will be able to run with Thomas Satoransky, coming off the bench. Like I said, you still have those guys. You have Jan Mahimi and Jason Smith on the bench. I would have thought they would have gotten another big, somebody who could help contribute, at least at this point. The big situation in Washington is not exactly the most ideal. Martin Gortat, Jan Mahimi, and Jason Smith, who I mentioned earlier, are all part of that rotation. None of them are guys that are going to blow your socks off at that point. But Brown's a guy that can come in and play right away. And like I said, Santa's a guy you're not going to see anywhere near Wizards for the next year or so. So I give the Washington Wizards a C-. I still think they could have took Lonnie Walker at this position. Walker ended up with the Spurs. Or they could have got another shooter. I know Jody Meeks was supposed to be brought in to be a big shooter, but still Jody Meeks, as usual, missed time due to injury. I know it's as usual, but it's the truth. Meeks misses a lot of time with injury, and for as good a shooter Jody is, he's never on the floor long enough to even make an impact. So this is the Southeast Division on this podcast today. If you want to follow the show on Facebook, is Around the Association on Facebook. Follow the website, which is aroundtheassociation.com. Please subscribe to the show on Spreaker and also iHeartRadio. Pass this on to your friends. Like I said, I want to know you guys' thoughts about it. We have 5 more divisions left in the series, and so like I said, we're going to take this time to go over each of the divisions. And like I said, we'll be releasing these pods. I'll release these pods throughout the entire weekend. So for Dan Thompson, aroundtheassociation.com, we'll see you guys later. Peace.